An old man walks into Victoria's Secret and tells the salesperson behind the counter that he needs a present for his wife. "You see," the man explains, "it's our 50th wedding anniversary, and I want to get something pretty to surprise the little lady, if you know what I mean." When he gets home, his wife greets him with a suspicious look and asks, "Where have you been?" "Surprise?" says the old man, handing her a tiny teddy. The wife snatches it from his hand and takes it to the bathroom to try it on. She struggles to make it fit, but it's 2 sizes too small. She spends a long time in the bathroom, hoping her husband will lose interest and fall asleep since it's getting late. Finally, she comes out of the bathroom with all the lights off. She is completely undressed, pretending to model the teddy in front of him. Her husband, still sitting up and squinting in the dark, finally says, "For as much as I spent on it, they could at least have ironed out the wrinkles." A young man noticed an elderly couple sitting down to lunch at McDonald's. He observed that they had ordered 1 meal and an extra drink cup. As he watched, the gentleman carefully divided the hamburger in half, then counted out the fries, 1 for him, 1 for her, until each had an equal share. He then poured half of the soft drink into the extra cup and placed it in front of his wife. The old man began eating, while his wife sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Feeling concerned, the young man approached them and offered to buy another meal so they wouldn't have to share. The old gentleman smiled and said, "Oh, no, thank you. We've been married 50 years, and we've always shared everything 50/50ths. The young man then turned to the wife and asked if she was going to eat. She smiled and replied, "It's his turn with the teeth." A married couple was in a terrible accident, and the husband's face was severely burned. The doctor explained that they couldn't use any skin from the man's body for grafting because he was too thin. The wife, wanting to help, offered to donate some of her own skin. However, the only suitable area was from her buttocks. They both agreed to keep this detail private and asked the doctor to respect their secret, as it was a sensitive matter. After the surgery, the husband's new face amazed everyone. He looked more handsome than ever, and his friends and family couldn't stop complimenting his youthful appearance. One day, deeply moved, the husband said to his wife, "Darling, I can never thank you enough for what you did. How can I ever repay you?" She smiled and replied, "Seeing your mother kiss your cheek is all the thanks I need." A couple were talking on the phone. Wife, "Where are you?" Husband, "At home, love." Wife, "Are you sure?" Husband, "Yes." Wife, "Turn on the mixer." Husband, turns mixer on. Wife, "Okay, my love, goodbye. Another day, suspicious." Wife, "Where are you?" Husband, "At home, love." Wife, "Are you sure?" Husband, "Yes." Wife, "Turn on the mixer." Husband turns mixer on. Wife, "Okay, my love, goodbye." The next day, the wife decides to go home without notice and finds her son alone, and she asks him, "Son, where is your father?" Son, "I don't know. He went out with the mixer." A New York divorce lawyer died and arrived at the pearly gates. St. Peter asked him, "What have you done to merit entrance into heaven?" The lawyer thought for a moment, then replied, "A week ago I gave a quarter to a homeless person on the street." St. Peter asked Gabriel to check the records. After a moment, Gabriel confirmed it was true. St. Peter said, "Well, that's nice, but it's not quite enough to get you into heaven." The lawyer quickly added, Wait, there's more. 3 years ago, I also gave a homeless person a quarter." St. Peter nodded to Gabriel, who again checked the records and confirmed it. St. Peter then leaned over and whispered to Gabriel, "What do you suggest we do with this fella?" Gabriel glanced at the lawyer, then said, "Let's give him back his 50 cents and tell him to go to hell." An elderly married couple had just settled into bed when the old man let out a loud fart and declared, 7 points. His wife, confused, rolled over and asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" The old man grinned and replied, "It's fart football." Not wanting to be left out, a few minutes later, the wife let one rip and proudly announced, "Touchdown, tie game." After a short pause, the old man fired off another and boasted, "Aha, 14-7, I'm winning." Determined to keep up, the wife let loose another big one, saying, "Touchdown, tie game again." Then, with a little squeaker, she added, "Field goal, I'm in the lead 17-14. Now feeling the pressure, the old man couldn't bear the thought of losing. Determined to reclaim the lead, he pushed with all his might, only to try too hard. To his horror, he accidentally pooped in the bed. His wife, shocked, asked, "What on earth just happened?" The old man sighed and said, "Half time, time to switch sides." A husband and wife are lying in bed in the middle of the night. Husband, "I won't be able to sleep afterward." Wife, "I can't sleep without it." Husband, "Why do you think of things like this in the middle of the night?" Wife, "Because I'm hot." Husband, "You always get hot at the most inconvenient times." Wife, "If you loved me, I wouldn't have to beg." Husband, "If you loved me, you'd be more considerate." Wife, "You don't love me anymore." Husband, "Of course I do. Let's just forget about this for tonight." Wife, "Boo-hoo." Sob, sob. Husband, all right, I'll do it." Wife, "What's the matter? Need a flashlight?" Husband, "I can't find it." Wife, "Oh, for heaven's sake, just feel for it." Husband, "There, are you happy now?" Wife, "Oh, yes, honey." Husband, "Is it up far enough?" Wife, "That's perfect." Husband, "Fine. Now go to sleep, and from now on, when you want the window open, do it yourself." After being married for 50 years, I took a careful look at my wife one day and said, 50 years ago, we had a cheap house, a junky car, slept on a sofa bed, and watched a 10-inch black and white TV. But hey, I got to sleep every night with a hottie, a 23-year-old girl. Now, I have a $750,000 home, a $45,000 car, a nice big bed, and a large screen TV, but I'm sleeping with a 73-year-old woman. So I said to my wife, "It seems to me that you're not holding up your end of the deal." My wife is a very reasonable woman. She calmly replied, "Go ahead. Find yourself a hot 23-year-old girl, and I'll make sure you're back in a cheap house, driving a junky car, sleeping on a sofa bed, and watching a 10-inch black and white TV. Aren't older women great? They really know how to solve an old guy's problems." John and his wife went to the state fair every year. Each time, John would say, "I'd like to ride in that airplane." And every year, his wife would reply, "I know, Johnny, but that airplane ride costs $10, and $10 is $10. Finally, one year, John said, "I'm 71 years old. If I don't ride that airplane this year, I may never get another chance." His wife replied, "That airplane ride costs $10, and $10 is $10. The pilot overheard them and said, "Folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take you both up for a ride. If you can stay quiet for the entire ride and not say one word, I won't charge you. But if you say one word, it'll cost you $10. John and his wife agreed, and up they went. The pilot did all kinds of twists and turns, but John and his wife didn't say a word. He tried all his tricks again, but still not a word. When they landed, the pilot turned to John and said, "By golly, I did everything I could think of to get you to yell out, but you didn't." John replied, "Well, I was going to say something when my wife fell out, but $10 is $10. An 85-year-old man had to provide a sperm sample for his physical exam. The doctor gave him a jar and said, "Take this jar home and bring back a sample tomorrow." The next day, the man returned to the doctor's office with the jar as clean and empty as the day before. The doctor asked, "What happened?" The man explained, "Well, Doc, it's like this. First I tried with my right hand, but nothing. Then I tried with my left hand, still nothing. Then I asked my wife for help. She tried with her right hand, then with her left, still nothing. She even tried with her mouth, first with her teeth in, then with her teeth out, but still nothing. We even called Arlene, the lady next door. She tried too, first with both hands, then an armpit, and she even tried squeezing it between her knees, but still nothing." The doctor, shocked, asked, "You asked your neighbor?" The old man replied, "Yep, none of us could get the jar open." Yesterday, I received a friend request from a young, attractive guy, about 19, 20 years old. I was curious. I wanted to know why someone that young wanted to be my FB friend. So I accepted. Then he started sending me private messages. He called me beautiful. He asked my age. I'm not a liar, so I told him and reminded him I'm quite a bit his senior. And I let him talk a bit because, truth be told, flattery isn't all bad. We kept chatting for a while, and within a short time, he asked if we could talk about adult things. I said, okay. Then he said, "Thank you, babe, you start." So I did. I told him adult things like I have arthritis in my knees and how badly they hurt. My back acts up when it is cold outside. I explained that I have crazy insomnia. And I didn't forget to tell him that I have a pacemaker. And of course, I told him about the laxatives. Can't forget that. I also didn't forget to tell him that I have good quality dentures. I was as honest as I could be about adult things. But I don't understand why he blocked me. A man was reading the paper when an ad caught his eye. It loudly announced, $500 Porsche new. The man thought that it was very unusual to sell a Porsche for $500, and he thought it might be a joke. But he said to himself, it's worth a shot. So he went to the lady's house who was selling the Porsche, and she led him into the garage. Sure enough, there was an almost brand new Porsche. Wow, the man said. Can I take it for a test drive? Sure, answered the lady. Unlike what he expected, the man found that the car ran perfectly. When he got back to the lady's house, he asked her, why are you selling me this great Porsche for only $500? Then the lady replied with a laugh, my husband just ran off with his secretary and he told me, you can have the house and the furniture. Just sell my Porsche and send me the money. A woman was nagging her husband to cut the grass, to which the husband answered, what do I look like to you, a landscaper? The next time the sink was dripping, she asked him again, honey, can you fix the faucet? The husband replied, what do I look like to you, a plumber? 2 days later, a light bulb went out, and she begged him again. Honey, can you change the light bulb? His reply was, what am I, an electrician? A few days later, the husband comes home from work to find the lawn cut, the faucet fixed, and the light bulb changed. Very surprised, he says, honey, what happened here? The wife replies, you know our new next-door neighbor, he came over and fixed everything. The husband asks, honey, how did you pay him? Oh, you know, the wife says, he told me I could either bake him a cake or have sex with him. Somewhat relieved, the husband asks, who, so what kind of cake did you bake for him? The wife replies, who do you think I am, Betty Crocker? A husband and wife are in bed getting cozy when the wife suddenly pushes him away and says, actually, I don't feel like it tonight. Could you just hold me instead? The husband, clearly frustrated, replies, what? Why can't we ever just have some fun? The wife responds, this is so typical. You have no idea what it's like to be a woman. You just don't understand me. She then turns over and goes to sleep. The next day, the husband feels bad and decides to make it up to her. He says, let's go shopping. Pick out whatever you like. They head to a high-end store, and the wife tries on several outfits. She struggles to choose, so the husband says, take them all. She's thrilled and gives him a big hug. Next, they stop by the jewelry section. She admires a pair of diamond earrings, but the husband says, let's do better. He gets her a tennis bracelet worth twice as much. Feeling like she's had the perfect day, they head to the cashier. But then the husband turns to the cashier and says, we've changed our minds. Could you put these back? The wife, shocked, asks, what's going on? The husband smiles and says, you thought I was buying all this? No, I just wanted you to hold them for a while. Now you know how I felt last night. During the wedding rehearsal, the groom approached the priest with an unusual request. Look, he said, I'll give you $100 if you change the wedding vows. When you get to the part where I promise to love, honor, and obey, and forsake all others, be faithful to her forever, could you just leave that part out? He slipped the priest the cash and walked away. The wedding day arrived. When it was time for the groom's vows, the priest looked him straight in the eye and said, will you promise to prostrate yourself before her, obey her every command and wish, serve her breakfast in bed every morning of your life, and swear eternally before God and your lovely wife that you will never even glance at another woman as long as you both shall live? The groom froze, his eyes wide, and said in a tiny voice, I do. After the ceremony, the groom pulled the priest aside and whispered angrily, I thought we had a deal. The priest smiled, slipped the $100 back into the groom's hand, and replied, the bride's father made me a much better offer. A woman marries the man she loves but never expected this on her wedding night. Jim decided to propose to Sandy, but before she could say yes, she felt she needed to share something important about her past. "Jim," she said, "I have a condition that caused my body to develop differently. My breasts never matured beyond what they were when I was 12 years old." Jim held her hand and smiled. "That doesn't matter to me. I love you for who you are." Relieved, Sandy asked, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Jim nodded and confessed, "Well, I do have something. My body isn't exactly typical either. My, proportions are the size of an infant's." Sandy thought for a moment and said, "That's okay, Jim. I love you, and I'm willing to embrace every part of who you are." They got married in a beautiful ceremony, and later that evening, excitedly headed to their honeymoon suite. As they started getting close, Sandy suddenly burst into laughter. Jim looked at her confused. "What's so funny?" he asked. Still laughing, Sandy said, "You told me your proportions were like an infant's." Jim chuckled and replied, "They are. 8 pounds, 7 ounces, and 19 inches long." A 50-year-old lady suddenly started learning how to swim instead of her usual routine of going to church. Everyone was curious and asked her, "Why the change in your interest? Why swimming all of a sudden?" The lady, looking a bit helpless, replied, "Whenever my son and daughter-in-law argue, she always asks him, 'If your mom and I fell into the water, whom would you save first?' And I don't want to put my son in a difficult position, so I'm learning how to swim." A few days later, the husband and wife were quarreling again, and the daughter-in-law asked, "Now tell me, if your mom and I fell into the water, whom would you save first?" The husband replied, "I don't have to jump in the water. My mom knows how to swim. She'll save you." The wife insisted, "No, you have to jump in the water and save one of us." The husband replied, "Then you're surely going to drown because I don't know how to swim, and my mom will definitely save me first." Fred and Mary just got married, but since they can't afford a honeymoon, they returned to Fred's parents' home for their first night together. The next morning, Johnny, Fred's little brother, wakes up and has breakfast. On his way out to school, he asks his mom, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" She replies, "No." Johnny says, "Do you know what I think?" His mom snaps, "I don't want to hear what you think. Just go to school." At lunchtime, Johnny comes home and asks again, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" His mom replies, "No." Johnny says, "Do you know what I think?" His mom responds, "Never mind what you think. Eat your lunch and go back to school." After school, Johnny comes home and asks once more, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" His mom says, "No." Johnny asks, "Do you know what I think?" This time, his mom sighs and says, "Fine, tell me what you think." Johnny says, "Last night, Fred came to my room for the Vaseline, and I think I gave him my airplane glue." After 60 years together, the couple's 3 kids, all successful, agreed to a Sunday dinner in their honor. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad," gushed son No. 1. "Sorry I'm running late. I had an emergency with a patient at the hospital. You know how it is, and I didn't have time to get you a gift." "Not to worry," said the father. "The important thing is that we're all together today." Son No. 2 arrived. "You and Mom look great, Dad. I just flew in from L.A. between depositions and didn't have time to shop for you." "It's nothing," said the father. "We're glad you were able to come." Just then, the daughter arrived. "Hello, and happy anniversary. Sorry, but my boss is sending me out of town, and I was really busy packing, so I didn't have time to get you anything." After they had finished dessert, the father said, "There's something your mother and I have wanted to tell you for a long time. You see, we were really poor, but we managed to send each of you to college. Through the years, your mother and I knew we loved each other very much, but we just never found the time to get married." The 3 children gasped and said almost in unison, "What? You mean we're bastards?" "Yeah," said the father. "Cheap ones, too." There was once a cruel king who executed people on a whim. One day a minister gave him bad advice, and the king, furious, ordered him to be thrown to his vicious, ravenous guard dogs. The minister fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, I have served you faithfully for 10 years, and this is my reward." The king was unmoved. "At least grant me 10 days before my execution," the minister pleaded. Curious, but still bloodthirsty, the king agreed. For the next 10 days, the minister visited the royal kennels, feeding the dogs, grooming them, caring for them, and earning their trust. When the time came, the king ordered him thrown to the beasts, but instead of attacking, the dogs wagged their tails, licked his feet, and played with him like an old friend. The king was stunned. "What happened to my vicious dogs?" The minister calmly replied, "I served these dogs for only 10 days, and they did not forget my kindness. I served you for 10 years, and you forgot at my first mistake." The king fell silent, deep in thought. The next day he replaced the dogs with crocodiles. One day a young woman walked into a dentist's clinic. Without a word, she sat down in the chair, unbuttoned her shirt, and removed her bra right in front of the shocked dentist. The dentist's jaw dropped as he quickly turned away and stammered, "Miss, what on earth are you doing? I'm a dentist. I only deal with teeth." The woman, completely calm, replied, "Oh, I know that. I'm here because there's a tooth stuck in my nipple and I need it removed." A woman rushed into a veterinary clinic carrying her limp pet duck. She laid him gently on the examination table, her eyes filled with worry. The vet pulled out his stethoscope, listened carefully to the duck's chest, and after a moment, he shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your duck, Cuddles, has passed away." The woman gasped. "Are you sure? He might just be in a coma or something." The vet sighed and left the room. A moment later, he returned with a Labrador retriever. The dog stood on his hind legs, placed his front paws on the table, and sniffed the duck from beak to tail. Then he looked up at the vet, shook his head, and whimpered. The vet patted the dog and let him out. A minute later, he came back with a cat. The cat jumped onto the table, delicately sniffed the duck, sat back, shook its head, and let out a soft meow before hopping down and walking out. The vet turned to the woman and said, "I'm sorry, but as I said, this is definitely a dead duck." He walked over to his computer, tapped a few keys, and handed the woman a bill. $150, she cried, "just to tell me my duck is dead." The vet shrugged. "If you'd just taken my word for it, it would have been $20. But with the lab report and the CAT scan, it's $150. 70 years ago, a terrible blizzard hit out of nowhere. It had been a mild winter, just some light snow, when suddenly the wind howled and the storm became fierce. I stepped outside to call my dog when I spotted a faint light in the woods. Someone was out there, lost. I called out, hoping they'd hear me. Sure enough, the light grew closer until a man holding a flashlight emerged, barely standing. I rushed to help him inside before we both got stranded. My dog ran in right behind us, and I struggled to shut the door against the raging wind. The poor fellow was freezing and in shock. I helped him out of his soaked coat and boots, sat him by the fire, and poured us both a glass of whiskey to warm up. I had a pot of stew on the stove, so we shared a meal. He kept thanking me, saying he thought he was a dead man until he heard my voice and found his way to safety. When we finished eating, we turned in for the night. But I only had one bed, so we had to share. No big deal, we figured. It was bitterly cold and body heat would keep us warm. Well, one thing led to another, and we started touching, then kissing, then making love. The next morning, the storm had passed. After breakfast, he put on his jacket, gathered his things, and said he had to go. His wife and 3 kids were waiting for him. Before leaving, he gave me the juiciest kiss on the cheek and walked out the door. I watched him disappear into the snow and realized I never even asked his name, and that was the last time I ever saw him. The TV crew sits in stunned silence. After a long pause, one of them clears his throat and says, "No, we meant your secret to long and healthy life." "Oh, that?" The old man chuckles. "Clean air, regular exercise, healthy food, no stress. You know, that kind of stuff." One day, the father's oldest son came to him with a request. "Dad, since I'm graduating high school, I'd really like to get a car." The father nodded and led him to the barn, pointing to the tractor parked inside. "This tractor is essential for the farm, son. I promise, once it's paid off, we'll get you that car." The boy wasn't thrilled, but he understood. A week later, the second son approached his father with a similar request. "Dad, how about a motorcycle? I'd love to have one now that I'm getting older." "Well," the father replied, "once the tractor's paid for, we'll look into getting you a scooter." And then, as if on cue, the youngest son came running up to his father. "Dad, I want a bike. Can I get one?" The father gave the same response. "Once the tractor's paid off, we'll talk about it." The youngest son left the barn a little disgruntled, mumbling under his breath. As he walked past the chicken coop, he noticed the farm rooster doing its usual duties with one of the hens. Frustrated, he marched over, kicked the rooster off the hen's back, and muttered angrily to himself. The father, hearing the commotion, came out and asked, "Son, why on earth did you do that? The rooster didn't do anything to deserve that." The young boy turned to him, hands on his hips, and shot back, "Well, nobody around here is getting to ride anything until that tractor gets paid off." In a land surrounded by a perfectly triangular lake, 3 kingdoms sat on each side. The first kingdom was rich and powerful, filled with prosperous people. The second kingdom was more humble, but still had its share of wealth and influence. The third kingdom, however, was poor and struggling and barely had an army. Eventually, the kingdoms went to war over control of the lake, knowing it was a valuable resource. The first kingdom sent 100 of its finest knights, clad in the best armor and each with their own personal squire. The second kingdom sent 50 knights in fine leather armor, accompanied by a few dozen squires. The third kingdom, however, could only send 1 knight, an elderly warrior well past his prime, with only 1 personal squire. The night before the battle, the knights of the first kingdom drank and partied well into the night. The knights of the second kingdom, though not as wealthy, enjoyed their own share of grog and stayed up late as well. In the third camp, the humble squire, with a rope and a tall tree branch, set up a noose and hung a pot from it. He filled the pot with stew, sharing a modest meal with his elderly knight. The next morning, the knights from the first 2 kingdoms woke up with terrible hangovers, too incapacitated to fight. Meanwhile, the old knight of the third kingdom was unable to get up, his age and weariness taking their toll. Instead of knights, the squires from all 3 kingdoms took up arms and fought the battle. It raged long into the night, but when the dust settled, only 1 squire remained standing, the squire from the third kingdom. And so it was that the squire of the high pot and noose proved to be equal to the sum of the squires of the other 2 sides. A butcher is hard at work, chopping up meat, when he hears the door open. He walks over and sees a golden retriever standing there with a note in its mouth. The butcher, amused, takes the note and reads it aloud. "I'll take a dozen sausage links. Keep the change." The butcher chuckles and is about to toss the note, but then he notices something strange. The dog is also holding a $20 bill in its mouth. Puzzled, the butcher decides to fulfill the order. He wraps the sausages in ice and places them in a basket. The dog grabs the basket with its mouth and walks out of the shop. Now thoroughly intrigued, the butcher locks up and follows the dog down the street. After a couple of blocks, the dog stops at a bus stop. A bus pulls up, and to the butcher's astonishment, the dog looks at the bus's number, then sits patiently. The butcher can't believe his eyes. This dog knows how buses work. The bus arrives, and the butcher follows the dog onto it. About 20 minutes later, the bus stops in a suburban neighborhood. The dog gets off and continues walking for another couple of blocks, eventually stopping at a large, beautiful house with a garden and a fountain. The dog approaches the front door, sets the sausages down, and then, with surprising speed, rams itself into the door, causing a loud thud. The dog stumbles back, shakes it off, and charges the door again with another resounding crash. Suddenly, the door swings open, and a man inside starts yelling at the dog. The butcher, absolutely stunned, steps forward and says, "Do you realize how smart this dog is? It can read, write, use money, and even take the bus. There are people out there who can't even do that." The man looks at the butcher, still furious, and says, No, you don't get it. This is the 3rd time this week he's forgotten his keys." He was tired of living broke, tired of his nagging, joyless marriage, and most of all, tired of feeling trapped. That's when a desperate young husband hatched a sinister plan. take out a hefty life insurance policy on his wife, and then have her quietly removed from the picture. Through whispers and shady connections, he was introduced to a man known only as Arty. No one knew his last name, just that he was the type of man who could handle problems for a price. Arty met the husband in a dark corner of a pub and laid it out straight. $5,000, he said. That's the price for making your wife disappear. The husband swallowed hard. I'll have the money, he promised, as soon as the insurance pays out. Arty wasn't born yesterday. I don't do credit, mate. Give me something, anything, as a sign of commitment. The man pulled out his wallet, revealing a single lonely pound coin. Arty stared at it, deadpan. You're kidding. Nope, it's all I've got. Arty sighed long and deep, muttering under his breath. Fine, a pound it is. Consider it a deposit. A few days later, Arty followed the target, now dubbed the future widow, to the local Asda. She was browsing the fruit and veg when he made his move. Gloved hands, silent approach. Within moments, she lay lifeless among the carrots and cucumbers. Unfortunately for Arty, fate wasn't done with him. The produce manager had seen it all and gasped at the scene, so Arty, committed to his job, turned and took care of the witness too. Unbeknownst to him, Asda security cameras had captured the entire event. Within minutes, police surrounded the building and arrested Arty before he could even reach the checkout. At the station, under pressure, Arty cracked and spilled the entire plot, from the hit-for-hire setup to the laughable £1 down payment. The next day, tabloids had a field day. One headline stood above them all: Arty chokes 2 for £1 at Asda.